Distinct privilege of watching a 5-year-old baseball game. Huh? Ah, so good. So, as you know, our kids are grown and out of the house, and some of them, chose to leave the house. Others we kicked out. But anyway, one of the downsides to not having kids around is you don't get to go see them do these things like play baseball or basketball or football or whatever it may be, right? It's that my wife and I just loved doing that, and we were lucky enough to have several kids, and a couple of them at least were really into sports, and all of them did sports when they were little. And we loved to go watch, soccer game and baseball game and all of that, and just it's just fun, right? I mean, it's just so cute to see them, right? I mean, when they're 5 years old and they're swinging that bat and they're running, they have no idea what's going on. Anyway, it's awesome. But the thing that, and so yesterday we adopted a kid, so because we don't have kids anymore. So we adopted a kid yesterday. We went and adopted Vinea's son, Copeland? Is that right? Yeah. Copeland. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on that name right now. But anyway, Copeland. So we went to adopt a kid, don't even remember his name. That's great. Whatever. Anyway, so we went to Copeland's baseball game, and we got to sit and watch him play. And it was super cool. But, the interesting thing is when we left the game, we had no idea who won. I mean, I tried to count it up, but, everybody got up to bat. They just kept going. And then there wasn't 3 outs, but then they would end the inning, and I was like, what? Why are they not still up to bat? They're still scoring. And anyway, there was a lot of confusion, but I didn't know who had won the game, right? And we all know how you win a baseball game, right? It's the team that has the most runs at the end of the game, right? That's how you win the game, right? But with this game, it didn't turn out that way. And some of you may know this, but I'm from Washington State. Okay, so I am obviously an avid Seahawk fan, and I am a regrettable Mariners fan. All right. So I have to root occasionally for the Mariners. And they had been good. They've had years that they were good, made the playoffs and all that kind of stuff, and it was exciting. But most of the time, being a fan of the Mariners is not exactly exciting, right? You have to learn how to lose a lot, right? And when you lose a lot, what ends up happening is you stop worrying so much about what the score at the end of the game is, and you start to, kind of highlight other things, like, how many hits they got, or if you have a really great pitcher, you put a bunch of KXs in the stands, and every time your pitcher gets a strikeout, you put a new sign up, and you're all excited about that. Even though you lose the game, you can still be excited that you got like 10 or 11 X's in the stadium, right? I mean, excited, right? So you start to focus on other things like, home runs and RBIs and base hits, and the guy, has the most hits in the league, you celebrate that because your team didn't make the playoffs, but you had the guy that had the most hits in the league, and so that's exciting. And if you go to the ballpark, if you go to a Mariners game, you start taking excitement in, things like the hot dogs. They're really good hot dogs. And, if you go to Safeco Field, they have great garlic fries, right? And, yeah. You get an order of garlic fries with a hot dog, and you know what? You won, right? You have won. So we are in 1 Peter. Good segue, right? Yeah. We are in 1 Peter, and we have been talking about for some time now. Peter has been driving home these points about us proclaiming the love of God to the world, to the lost in this world. And he has communicated that to us through how we can do that in government, in politics, how we can do that in the workplace, and even how we can do that in the home. Most recently, 3 weeks ago, we saw that Peter tells us that, in general, we have to learn how to do good even when people do evil to us. We need to learn how to be good even to our enemies, and that we would respond to evil with good. The concern that in the passage that we're going to look at today from Peter is that of perspective. He is continuing this teaching on how to proclaim the love of Christ to the world. But here, he wants to make sure we understand where true victory lies. How do we know that we have won the game? And after Peter has spent a chapter and a half on dealing with how we should proclaim the love of Christ to the lost, after he has just encouraged us to continue to be good even though others are doing evil to us, he then stops and says, wait a second, I want to make sure I'm clear. We need to understand what it means to win the game. We need to understand because, we as Christians, I think we can get confused sometimes over what is victory in the kingdom of God. And we can begin to focus on things that aren't about the win. We start to focus on the hits, or we start focusing on the hot dogs instead of focusing on what it means to win. And we begin to celebrate the things that maybe we shouldn't be celebrating. Or we begin to mourn the things that we shouldn't mourn because we feel like we have lost. And so this passage of 1 Peter is dealing with perspective. What is true victory? And true victory is not what the world tries to communicate it as. And we need to know how to score. We need to know how to win this battle and what evidence that we are winning the battle. So let's read the passage. 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 18 to 22. For Christ also suffered once for sins, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He was put to death in the body, but made alive in the spirit. After being made alive, he went and made proclamation to the imprisoned spirits, to those who were disobedient long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it, only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. And this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also. Not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers in submission to him. All right, so Peter in this passage gives us 2 images that he wants to make sure that we understand are not where we find victory, are not how we win the game. And the first example he gives, or the picture he gives, is that of Jesus. Again, we have just been talking about good, evil, right? Doing good to those who are evil. And then he launches into Jesus. Consider Jesus, who was perfect. Jesus never sinned. Matter of fact, Jesus never hurt anyone. Everything he did was loving. Everything he did was to draw people to himself. Everything he did was for their good. Even when he challenged the Pharisees, right, he wasn't doing it to destroy them. He was doing it to build them up, to try to draw them, to expose the sin in their own life, the hypocrisy in their own life, so that they would come to Jesus. Jesus was perfect in every way. He sacrificed his life for those who are evil. He didn't sacrifice his life for the good, right? He didn't come so that those who are good would be saved. He came so that the evil in this world, which was all of us, would be saved. In essence, Jesus was the greatest good that anyone could do. There's no one more righteous than him. There's no one more perfect than him. There's no one more loving than him. He was perfect in all of those ways, and yet, how did they respond to Jesus? See, evil is always doing evil. Evil will always respond to good with evil. Because evil rejects perfection. Evil is offended by goodness, and evil will always seek to destroy it. See, evil desires to get rid of anything that is good so that they can feel like they are good, right? The evil desires to be elevated, and so in order to elevate itself, it seeks to destroy that which is above it. Evil tries to silence the voices of true good. This was true in Jesus' day, but I think we can say this is still true today, a universal truth, but certainly in our culture, we see that evil is seeking to destroy good. It most often does that through redefining things. We have a culture of deconstructionism, constantly trying to take words, ideas, history, and deconstruct it from what we thought it was to something different. You talk to a millennial generation today, and it can be challenging sometimes to have a conversation with them because they use words that you go, where did that word come from? Because I don't get what you mean by that, right? And it's not because it's a new word, but it's because it's an old word that they've now redefined. Perfect example of this is the word lit. Okay, this is the most common, this is the new one, right? Lit is a word that we often have associated, at least historically, with the idea of getting high or, getting drunk or doing, something that you shouldn't be doing. That is the kind of the foundation of that word. It's to get lit means that you are, smoking something you shouldn't be smoking, right? However, this generation has now redefined that word, and now lit can be used in a lot of different ways. But not just that word, it's a lot of words. Words have a floating definition in our culture today, so that we don't really, if we use a word, we can define it as we use it. We don't have to be constrained to the definitions that have been used in the past of that word. And so that makes communication obviously difficult. But within what I want to get to, within this deconstruction culture, they are deconstructing what is good and making it look bad. They are deconstructing what is bad and trying to make it look good. This has been going on for a long time. Premarital sex, for a long time in our culture, was considered to be something that was bad and something to be avoided, and that you should save yourself until you get married. Once you're in a marriage relationship, then you can, you get to enjoy all the fruits of God's, creation, right? Anyway, but our culture has slowly and completely now destroyed that perspective, deconstructed the idea that premarital sex is wrong. And now we have, not only is premarital sex not wrong, it's actually considered good in some places, and it's in the culture's mind. The idea is that, you need to have premarital sex with a person before you marry him because you need to know that you're compatible, or you need to know these different things, or you need to, and it's crazy. But this is our culture, okay? This is what we're living in. This is evil seeking to destroy good in order to elevate itself. Abortion is another one. It used to always be considered by everyone to be wrong. Now, it's been deconstructed, and there is even some who are beginning to celebrate abortion as something that's good. Things that are good that are now considered bad, or at least quickly heading there. Prayer. We have to be careful now who we ask or who we say we're going to pray for. A coworker comes up to us and says, hey, my life is really horrible right now. And we have to be careful whether we say, I'll be praying for you. Because they might get offended by that. They might get mad about that. What do you mean you're going to pray for me? adoption. The church in general has gone from a good thing to a bad thing, right, in our culture. Right? I mean, the church is under attack. It's now considered to be these closed-minded people who are off in this extreme world of their own where they are seeking to destroy people and judge people and be mean to people and hurt people. That's how the church is starting to be defined. Again, it's all about this deconstruction. It's all about evil seeking to redefine what is good and what is bad. And they attack it in order to discredit it. And they have destroyed Jesus, and they're seeking to destroy us as well. Anything that's good, they want to have destroyed. So what do we get from this idea that Jesus, who was perfect, even he suffered evil? What is this image that Peter is giving us? He's telling us, okay, there's this Jesus. He was a perfect man. He lived this perfect life, yet evil still came in and sought to destroy him. The point is this. Even if we are perfect, even if we are perfect in our being good to the evil in this world, we will still suffer. We need to recognize that. John 15, 20 to 21. Remember what I told you. This is Jesus. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obey my teaching, they will obey yours also. They will treat you this way because of my name, for they do not know the one who sent me. You see, I think we as Christians sometimes think that if we were just nicer to them, if we were just a little bit better to them, if we were just a little bit more patient with evil people, that they would eventually treat us right. That's our mindset. We think, if you do good to them, they'll do good to you, right? And so we enter into life thinking that that's what we need to do. However, we begin to become confused when we get evil given back to us. And when that evil comes back to us, we begin to doubt ourselves. Wait a second, maybe I wasn't good to them. Wait, maybe I don't have this right. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I just, you know what I'm saying? We step out and we begin to do good to people, and then we face evil and we begin to second guess ourselves. Instead of recognizing that Jesus was persecuted, and so will we be persecuted. If we do good, you should expect that you're going to get evil in return. Being liked by this world is not how we win the game. The Christian church has for too long aped the culture in hopes to appease it, in hopes to be accepted by it, in hopes to be treated nicely by it. And we have lost our understanding of how to win this game. We have gotten confused by that, and we're missing it. Worldly success does not lead to victory. The biggest church is not the one necessarily that is following Christ. Vice versa, the smallest church, not necessarily the worst at following Jesus. We know these things, but are we living it out in our life day to day? And that's Peter's point here, is to understand how to win the game. First of all, we need to understand how not to win the game, and we don't win the game by being liked by evil. Second, we have this example of Noah. Noah is, Old Testament story, right? The whole flood thing. It is said that in Noah's day, it was the most evil generation ever on the earth. There was nothing but evilness everywhere. And yet Noah lived in this, and he proclaimed the love of God to the most evil generation in the world has ever seen. He was a total fool for God. Think about this. Never had there been rain on the earth. God says, hey, build a boat. How he would even have known what a boat was may have been, I suppose he had lakes, right? So they would, understand that. But why would I build a boat in the middle of a desert? Why would I do that? God comes down and says, there's going to be rain that's going to come on the earth. Water's going to come from the sky. And why would he believe that? Noah was a fool for God. And the culture all around him started pointing their fingers at him, saying, "You are a fool. What are you doing? This is you're building this crazy thing. You are out to lunch. You're wasting all your money. You're wasting all your time. You're wasting your life, your reputation. It's totally destroyed." Noah was all alone, and he was totally surrounded by evil. And evil stepped in and ridiculed. They thought Noah was arrogant because he was proclaiming the love of God, proclaiming that this judgment was coming, that this flood was coming. They mocked Noah because they thought he was crazy because he was building this boat. The proclaimed good news did not convince anyone. Think about that. Noah's building this ark, he's proclaiming the love of God, and no one believed him. The threat of punishment, the judgment that's to come, did not convince the evil generation to repent. And even when the rain started to come, the supernatural sign from God did not convince them. Again, this is the same in our culture today. Christians are ridiculed. Christians are mocked. Christians are considered arrogant because we claim there's only one way to heaven. We're considered even evil to teach that a loving God will judge those who don't love him in return. We're considered ignorant because we accept supernatural signs. See, evil will never understand the message. Evil will never understand the love of God. Matthew 13, 14, and 15. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing but never understanding. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. Evil in this world has a calloused heart, and they are not going to turn from their evil ways. What this image tells us is that other people becoming a Christian is not how we win the game. Religious success does not lead to victory. We sometimes think this is how we judge whether we're winning the game or not, is by how many new believers we have, or by how many outreach services we do, or by how many mission trips we go on, or how many missionaries we have come in, or how many people that we share the love of Christ with. We have all of these things, and we're saying, well, if you do a lot of those, well, then you're winning the battle. That's victory. And Peter's saying, no, you need to understand that this world is not going to come to Jesus. It's going to be a rare thing. It's going to be a small amount of people. It's going to be a remnant that actually comes to Christ. And we can never judge whether we're being victorious or not based on how many people are coming to Christ because of us. We are responsible to declare the love of God, but we are not responsible for them to respond. That is their individual choice. It's free will. And we need to understand that that is not how we know if we're winning the game. That is not how to win the game. It is what we need to do. It is what God has called us to love and declare the love of God to the world. But whether or not they respond is not what we're looking for, not what we're looking at, and not how we determine if we have won. All right. Peter then goes into this baptism piece, talks about the waters that Noah was saved from, how they are a symbol of our baptism today. And basically this is the answer to the question of how do we know if we're winning? Because we know if we're winning if we have new life ourselves. See, baptism is a symbol of the victory because, first of all, it shows that we have died. As one goes into the water, it is a symbol of death, that the individual is dying to control. It's dying to their own will. It's dying to their own dreams of the future, dying to their own reputation, dying to anything that is selfishly motivated, to security, to family, to friends, to jobs, to rights. In order to become a Christian, in order to win the battle, we have to first of all die to ourselves. It is through death that we find victory. And once we have died, once we have stopped clinging to this life, then we get to experience new life. We are a new creation, it says in 2 Corinthians 5. We have a new family. We are filled with the Spirit. We have a relationship with a loving God. And this is so key, the relationship piece. I've said this before, but I want to drive it home again. Relationship is the success. When we have a relationship with God, we win. We so often get distracted by all this other stuff, and it always has to come back to the relationship with God. That we would seek His face above all else. That we would seek to know Him and to follow Him. Anytime we wrestle in this world, we need to recognize that we have to go back to the relationship. Continue to seek Him. Continue to want more of Him, to enjoy that relationship more, to understand that relationship more, to experience that relationship more. So we know that we've won when we have that relationship, when we are a new creation, when we are filled with the Spirit. But we also know, well, the result of the win is a clear conscience. And I'll close with this concept about clear conscience. See, the interesting thing about this Noah situation was the flood waters were two things at the same time. The flood waters were judgment for those who were evil. Wiped them out. But at the same time, those waters were salvation for Noah. And this is so often the case with judgment. Judgment always reveals what is true. Evil are destroyed, but Noah was saved. The interesting thing is that judgment draws different reactions depending on whether you have a clear conscience or not. The evil, when they see judgment coming or they think about judgment, they look at it with dread and fear. But if you have a relationship with Christ, you actually look at it with joy and excitement. You see, when the rain started falling for Noah, he was no longer no longer filled with fear. Because the reality of his faith, the reality that this is actually happening, that he had put it all on the line, and it was for this dream, right? It was like, is this real? But when the rain started falling, he realized, oh my gosh, it is real, right? I am saved. This God has been speaking to me. I am His. I am in relationship with Him, and I am saved. And it's the same for us. When we have a clear conscience, when we have taken that step of faith and done good to evil, that we would be able to see the judgment coming and we can actually get excited because then we can go, yes, it is true. Yes, God is here. Yes, God is in relationship with me, and I know it's true, and I have security in Him. Noah was filled with joy and we can be filled with joy as well. Because the relationship we have with God brings peace. Our conscience is clear in relationship, not by being accepted by this world. When we are receiving evil, we have a tendency to begin to second guess our faith. When we are getting attacked by the world, we have a tendency to think, what am I doing wrong? And how often do we go to God and say, God, what am I doing wrong? Because the world is attacking me. When conflict comes, we doubt. When health issues come, we doubt. When tragedy strikes, we doubt. That's because we're looking at success in this world as the victory. It is in relationship. The closer you are in relationship with God, the more at peace you will be. The more clear your conscience will be. And the more you'll be able to understand what is victory and what's not. A clear conscience comes from a relationship, not from being accepted by the world or from religious success. It's not based on how many times you go to church. It's not based on how many mission trips you go on. It's not based on how many times you read through the Bible. It's not based on how often you pray. It's not based on how much you give to the church. It's not based on religiosity. It's based on a relationship with God. All right. So Peter is just driving home this point for us. That as we are interacting in this world, seeking to proclaim the love of God, that we would recognize what the victory is and where victory lies. How to win the game. How do we know if we've won? He doesn't want us to get our eyes... Whoa. All hail the speaker gods. I don't know. Anyway, he doesn't want us to get our eyes on being treated well by this culture, this world. And thinking that that's how we will know if we're successful. If the world begins to turn and actually treat us well, then we know, oh, I must be successful because look at I'm getting new things happening and new friends and people that are interacting with me in new ways, and it's great. I have all this wonderful things going on in my life. No, that's not where we find success. Also, he doesn't want us to be focused on the idea that evangelism is the key, that as soon as we get everybody in the world coming over to Christ and commit their life to Christ, then we have success. That's not it either. He says, I recognize that in this evil world, you're going to have some trouble. And it's going to come, and it's going to be persecution. It's not going to be fun. And matter of fact, the more you follow me, the more you will actually be treated with evil in this world. And so when that happens, recognize that the only peace that will come is through your relationship with me. And so when evil comes, dive into the relationship with me. Spend more time with me. Because this world's going to reject you. And I will say this as well, even Christians, our fellow Christians will reject us sometimes. They will. I've had it happen in my life. Some crazy idea that I get from God, and I go, I'm going to follow God that way, and they're like, what are you doing? You're crazy. And get rejected by even my fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. So this is why we lean on the relationship we have with God. That is where you will find the confidence. That is where you'll find the peace. It's not from just reading a book. It's not through just spending time with Christians. It's not through doing what God tells us to do. It's through spending time with Him. And I've said that enough, so we're going to stop. All right. All right, worship team, come forward. We're gonna kind of transition into communion. So we'll sing a song, and then we'll do communion. And then after communion, we'll sing a few more songs, and we'll be done for the day. So.